All right, today we're diving deep into Sri Lanka's last great rainforest, Sinharaja. Now, this place is an absolute world treasure, but it's also a place full of paradoxes, where sometimes the very things meant to save it end up being the biggest threats. It's a fascinating story.
So let's just start with one number, 95%. What's that about? Well, it means that if you want to see pretty much all of Sri Lanka's endemic birds, the birds you can't find anywhere else on the entire planet, you have to go to this one forest. 95%. That figure alone tells you just how unbelievably special this place is.
So, to be clear, what is Sinharaja? Well, it's the last major, healthy piece of primary tropical rainforest left in Sri Lanka. And because of that, it's been named a UNESCO World Heritage Site. We're talking about the same level of importance as the Galapagos Islands or the Great Barrier Reef. It's a really big deal.
And getting that level of protection, it didn't just happen overnight. This has been a journey that's lasted more than a century, starting way back in 1875. The really big moments came much later, though. In 1978, it became a biosphere reserve, which recognized that crucial link between the forest and the people around it. And then, in 1988, it got the highest honor, World Heritage Site status.
Okay, so what is it that makes this forest so incredibly valuable? You can think of it as an engine, or maybe a factory, for creating unique life. It is just a hotspot of what scientists call endemism.
And hey, just so we're all on the same page here, endemism is a simple idea. It just means a species is totally unique to one specific place. It's found there and absolutely nowhere else on Earth. And in Sinharaja, this concept is just taken to a whole other level.
Let me just throw a few numbers at you to show you the scale of this. It all starts with the foundation of the forest, right? The trees. Over 60% of the tree species in Sinharaja are endemic.
Then you look up in that canopy at the animals living among those unique trees. And guess what? More than half of its mammal species are also found nowhere else, from the purple-faced langur to the tiny little Sinharaja shrew.
And that brings us right back to that jaw-dropping number we started with, 95%. Nearly all of the country's unique birds call this forest home. This makes Sinharaja, without a doubt, the single most important place for bird conservation in all of Sri Lanka. But it's not as simple as just protecting one bird at a time.
Now this is where it gets really cool. A lot of the birds here hang out in these things called mixed species flocks. You've got the noisy, common birds, like the orange-billed babbler, acting as the lookouts, the sentinels. They create a safety net that lets the rarer, shyer birds, like this red-faced malkoha, come out and feed safely. So what's the big takeaway? You can't just save the rare bird. You have to save the common one it depends on. The entire flock, the whole system, is what you have to conserve.
And that complexity brings us to the real heart of this story, the paradoxes of Sinharaja. Because the threats to this forest are, well, they're not what you'd expect. In a weird way, they often come from good intentions that just went sideways.
Okay, paradox number one, the push for clean energy. Sri Lanka wants to get off fossil fuels, so the government is encouraging many hydropower projects. Sounds great, right? Clean energy. The problem? They're targeting the perfect rivers for this, the fast-flowing, pristine ones, which happen to be right in Sinharaja's buffer zone. So you have this insane situation where they're damming and diverting the very water systems that make the forest a World Heritage Site in the first place.
Or how about this one, the restoration trap? Back in the 70s, the goal was to reforest cleared land as fast as possible. So what did they do? They planted non-native trees like pine and mahogany that grow really quickly. Seemed like a good idea at the time. But today, we know those trees create acidic soil and a sterile environment where nothing else can grow. So, in this incredible twist, a conservation solution from the past is now officially classified as a modern-day threat, an invasive species that we have to get rid of.
And then there's the paradox of success. To stop illegal logging, a brilliant ecotourism program was set up to train local guides. And it worked. It gave people a stable income and a powerful reason to protect the forest. The trap? It worked a little too well. Now, the sheer number of tourists is threatening to overwhelm the very thing they came to see, with garbage and disturbance becoming a real problem. The solution is becoming the problem.
So with all these tricky, contradictory threats, how on earth do you go about protecting this place? Well, the answer is this really fascinating two-front strategy, where you have totally different groups coming together to fight for Sinharaja.
The best way to think about it is like a pincer movement. On one side, you've got the big, slow-moving, top-down approach. That's the government, with its official World Bank-funded 10-year plan. It's bureaucratic, yeah, but it's essential for long-term management. But that's only half the story.
Because the other side of that pincer is the fast, nimble, bottoms-up action from groups like the Rainforest Protectors Trust. You can think of them as the forest's emergency responders. While the government is slowly developing its big plan, these guys are in court right now, suing to stop those hydropower projects. And even more amazing, they're raising money to buy critical private lands on the edge of the forest, protecting them forever before they can be sold for tea or palm oil plantations. They save the land today, so the big plan is something left to manage tomorrow.
So this all leads to what the future of conservation could look like here. And the thinking is changing, big time. We're moving away from the old idea of just building a wall around the forest, treating it like a fortress, and moving towards something much smarter, much more integrated.
At its core, it's a huge shift in thinking. Those old pine plantations, they created what you could call a hostile buffer. Basically, a dead zone that didn't help the forest and actually increased conflict with villagers. The new goal is to create an intelligent buffer, one that actually works with nature and with people.
So how do you fix those failed plantations? With this absolutely ingenious method. Instead of just chopping down all the invasive pine trees, you go in and plant native seedlings underneath them. The pine canopy acts like a nurse tree, giving the little native saplings shade and protection. Then, over time, the native species grow up, take over, and the pine is naturally phased out. You're literally turning the problem into part of the solution. It's brilliant.
Now get ready for this, because this piece of research is a game changer. Scientists looked at bird populations in the areas where people live, right on the edge of the forest. No surprise, the big tea plantations were the worst for bird life. But here is the shocker. The traditional village home gardens, these complex, messy-looking mixes of fruit trees, spices, and vegetables, they actually had a higher abundance of birds than patches of actual forest. This is huge. It's proof that a landscape where people live and work can be incredibly valuable for biodiversity.
So when you put it all together, the future strategy for Sinharaja is this really smart, multi-layered approach. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. It's about using the right tool for the right place. Strict protection for the core forest, that clever nurse method for the failed buffers, supporting those amazing home gardens where people live, and using quick, direct land purchases to save the areas under immediate threat.
And this really leaves us with a final big question to think about. The story of Sinharaja suggests that maybe that old model of conservation, building a fortress to keep people out, is just outdated. Maybe the future is about learning to manage the entire landscape, not as a fortress to be defended, but as a complex, productive, and beautiful garden for both people and nature.